have the pleasure to have with me today Jeanine Cummins, the author of American Dirt, Tierra Americana, now in Spanish. Hola, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So glad to see you. I was really looking forward to this conversation because this is a book that I read a while ago and I was fascinated by it. The story starts with a woman, Lidia Quijano, who has an 8-year-old son, Luca, and they're in the middle of a quinceañera party and suddenly there's a massacre perpetrated by sicarios. They're in Acapulco, in Mexico, and then a lot of other things happen that unleashes the action in the story. I know that before the book was published, there was a bidding war. Everybody wanted a piece of it. Then Oprah Winfrey put it on the map by selecting it for her book club. And then what followed was something that nobody, I guess, expected, is that there was a lot of controversy. There were people that were considering the book cultural appropriation. This was in 2020, before the pandemic. Certainly was almost like a different life. It were different times.
Yes.
I know we're getting ready for the publication now, and I guess the promotion, which is part of what we're doing today, of the publication of the book in Spanish. How are you preparing for this time around? I'm hoping people will have more perspective after the book came out in English, and I feel like time also, can make things evolve. How are you preparing for the launching of the book in Spanish?
Well, I should say the book has been out in Spanish also since 2020. What we are doing now is the publication of the paperback.
Correct. Yes.
And so it's quite difficult to know. Nothing with this book has gone the way that anyone anticipated. When I wrote the novel, I felt very confident that no one would care, actually. I wrote this book beginning in 2013. Mm-hmm. And there was a humanitarian crisis at the border long before the media started paying attention to it.
Yes.
And that was part of the reason why I started writing the novel. And so in that landscape, I didn't expect, and I had 3 previous books. They were all quite modestly published. Mm-hmm. I just didn't anticipate that there would be a huge amount of interest in this novel.
Right.
And so that was quite surprising from the get-go. And it was so encouraging. I was so delighted to see such a strong response initially in the publishing industry. And then, of course, as you described, the sort of backlash, also didn't see it coming. I anticipated some pushback earlier. And then when it didn't happen, I thought we were going to be fine. And then obviously there was quite a storm around the publication when it finally came out. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think there are things in life where you just have to let go of control. I have a good friend who's very fond of reminding me, your job is to write the book, and mm-hmm. that's it.
Because this was quite serious. For what I understand, there were people who were even there were death threats and very bad messages on social media and etc. Yeah. It was serious.
Yeah, it was serious. There were threats of violence. I have to be clear to say that I don't call them death threats,
right?
But there were incredible threats of violence against me, and that's why my publisher had to cancel my tour.
Which included 40 cities or something like that. I know there were big plans for the book, but life is very unexpected, and that's something that we've learned from the pandemic. Let's just look at that, and we're still there, and there's still things that keep changing and being canceled, and we're in a very complicated society, I want to say, and things are very unexpected. The way people receive something might be surprising, might be
yes.
Harsh. And it's interesting because I don't know if a lot of people know this, because they painted you as a white lady. I want to say, I don't even know how to say it, but you have Puerto Rican roots. Your grandmother was from Puerto Rico, correct?
Thank you for acknowledging that. Yes. They're part of the problem about the way that I was perceived, I think, around the time of publication, is that I did write an essay in 2015 where I acknowledge that I am white, you know? I wrote this essay about racial justice, and in the context of that essay about my family's experiences with the criminal justice system in this country, it was important in that context for me to acknowledge that I am white. I have always been very proud of my Puerto Rican heritage. I have always identified as Latina. I've in fact, what I've always said is that I'm Puerto Rican and Irish. That is how I have always identified myself. So it was quite jarring to see that just at this moment, this one line that I wrote, 7 years ago was pulled out of this essay, taken out of context, and sort of used as evidence that I was, suddenly discovering my Puerto Rican heritage and exploiting that, somehow transferring it, I think, to Mexican. This was part of
kind of use it to your advantage, basically.
Yes,
that's what they were, I guess, seeing it that way.
Yes, but part of the really crazy making experience of being in that moment was that being Puerto Rican does not make me a Mexican migrant. These are not the same thing. So I didn't understand why it became such a central part of the conversation around, my ethnicity has nothing to do with my capacity to write a novel. I wrote the novel because I care very deeply about this subject. And that's why I spent 5 years researching it and writing a book that I didn't really think was going to resonate with people in a mainstream audience in this country, because I felt it was important. I felt it was an important subject that I wanted to help in my meager way draw more attention to this topic that I felt like people were ignoring.
I really appreciate for you to stop by People in Espanol and talk to us. We're very excited for any news that are coming from you.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. So nice to meet you.
You too. Bye-bye.